A nationally recognized economist and education researcher lands in Wisconsin this week, just after the release of his report for the Economic Policy Institute on a new type of charter school that's also made its way here. The city of Milwaukee chartered the private elementary school that gets public per-pupil dollars. It's part of the Rocket Ship education chain of schools based in California and is in its first year of classes on the city's south side. But the company hopes to expand to 8 schools in Milwaukee, just as it hopes to expand nationwide. Gordon Lafer is professor at the University of Oregon's Labor Education and Research Center. He joins us now, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So why the particular research interest in charter schools in Milwaukee and this Rocket Ship school in particular?
Well, Milwaukee has long been one of the central places in the country for experimentation and educational policy. And what we've seen in the last couple of years in Milwaukee, but in other poor cities around the country, is increasingly this push to a model of school that replaces teachers with technology, that uses very young and inexperienced teachers, that was characterized by PBS as being mass production of education. And it's something that has a lot of money behind it, that's small, but that's growing very quickly. And so it was something that I thought was important to look at in more detail.
And that would describe the methodology of these Rocket Ship schools. It's called blended learning?
So they call it blended learning. The blend is that part of the day a kid is in a classroom with a teacher, although there are 33 kids to a licensed teacher in the schools. And then part of the day they're sitting in a computer lab in front of programs learning English and math. The curriculum is shrunken to an almost exclusive focus on reading and math. There's no music, there's no drama, there's no libraries or librarians, there's no foreign languages. And it's heavy on test prep, but also they say that they save a lot of money by using technology to replace teachers. So there's no licensed teacher in the classroom when they're doing these computer labs.
Is there anything wrong per se, though, with the heavy use of technology?
I think we have to look at the different ways that technology is used. And generally, there's a lot of technology in rich kids' classes too, but richer, more privileged students are encouraged to be active users of technology. So they're writing programs, they're making movies, they're editing music, they're laying out graphics. Poor kids are made into passive users of technology, where they're hooked up to what are essentially video game-based programs where you have to solve this math program to make your way through the forest or something like that. It's a very different use of technology, and it's a very rigid kind of education.
Now, this Rocket Ship school, the single one so far in Milwaukee, was chartered by the city of Milwaukee. Why would the city do that if they didn't think this was a good model for their students?
I'm not in their heads. I don't know if they were misled. It was heavily promoted by the Milwaukee Chamber of Commerce, which raised $2.5 million for it. The president of the Milwaukee Association of Commerce sits on the board of Rocket Ship. And this model has been promoted by corporate lobbies around the country. And partly they say it will save money. Partly, I don't know about the Milwaukee Chamber of Commerce, but there are people making a lot of money off of this school. The school is nonprofit, but the software products that it uses in the computer lab are for-profit, and like the math program that Rocket Ship uses is owned by investors who are the same people that fund the Rocket Ship schools. So the more schools open in Milwaukee, the more kids use that software, the more their profits go up. So, part of the danger is you're looking at a model now where growth and the very model of education is driven in part by making money by venture capitalists and investment banks rather than simply by what's good for the kids.
Rocket Ship touts its academic success, saying that students average 1.75 years of growth in a single school year. So even if the chain of schools is making money, if they are doing well by students, is that a problem?
Well, I think there are there's two things I would say. One is, I don't know where those numbers come from, but last year in 2012 and 13, every one of the Rocket Ship schools in California failed to make adequate yearly progress according to the federal No Child Left Behind laws. 4 of them for 2 years in a row, which meant they were under federal remediation. They had to spend more money on teacher training. But the other thing is, just measuring English and math scores, I mean, Rocketship themselves has said we may have produced students who are good at passing tests. I mean, they're tested all the time in those schools, but not at other things. I mean, I have a 7-year-old and who's in 2nd grade, and you know, a lot of the things that parents want for their kids is not captured in tests. You want a teacher to see like who's shy and needs to learn to be loud, who's angry and needs to learn to control it, who's a loner and needs to learn to work in groups. And you know, the easiest way to say, is the Rocketship really a good model or not, is look at the best schools in Wisconsin. Look at where privileged parents send their kids. There are lists of what are the best elementary schools in Wisconsin. They all have music and art and libraries and foreign languages. And what we're really seeing is the Chamber of Commerce, and by the way, the heads of the Chamber of Commerce in Milwaukee, their hometown schools don't look anything like Rocketship. So they're saying this is the gold standard for poor kids in poor cities, but it's something we wouldn't accept for our own kids. That to me seems fundamentally wrong. We shouldn't be promoting a model for poor kids that other people wouldn't accept for their own children.
Overall, do charter schools have their students perform better than traditional public schools?
No, and there have been a lot, you don't have to take my word for it, there have been tons of studies done. On average, they're all the same, and what all the studies find is the single most important thing in predicting economic success is poverty. And so, of course, poor school, you know, in a poor city, kids are going to score lower for all kinds of reasons. But charter schools versus regular public schools, there's no difference. And so there's no, the policy idea that Senator Olson, chairman of the Education Committee, floated, which was basically to say, let's take low-performing public schools and replace them with privately run charter schools, is a policy that has no basis in evidence, either nationally or locally.
So in your opinion, what can states and cities do to improve the education of poor students?
Well, you know, for one thing, you know, if you could do something about poverty and say we're going to raise the minimum wage, we're going to create more living wage jobs, we're going to keep more industry here, that would be great. That's not under the control of the school system. The most important thing that is under the control of the school system is class size. Wisconsin has a program called SAGE that provides funding for districts that are high poverty to keep classes limited to 18 kids between kindergarten and 3rd grade. But the funding has been frozen. It hasn't been adjusted for inflation for 20 years. And there are now a lot of schools that qualify but can't afford to make use of it. If all the legislature did was restore the funding to SAGE to its original real level, that would do a lot more than anything about playing around between vouchers, charters, or something else.
All right, Gordon Lafer, thank you very much.
Thank you.